A report has been released online which claims India is rejecting Chinese investments and cracking down on Chinese companies that have been found to be flouting India's tax regulations, amongst other issues. As far as weeding out the Chinese economic tentacles is concerned, what do you think really there needs to be the next focus? Because like I said, the FDI may be at a 10-year low, but as far as the trade relations go, those numbers are still skewed in China's favor.
We really don't need to do anything more. There is a dichotomy in the government where at the highest level, the policy is very clear. It's been laid out as Atmanirbhar Bharat. And there is absolutely no doubt from the top echelons of the government that we need to be Atmanirbhar. But exactly what you mentioned right now, the imports from China has actually gone up.
Yes.
And significantly going up. So let's go into the details of it as to why there is a dichotomy. India went through the liberalization process in 1991. And as part of the liberalization process, the tariffs were brought down. And therefore, as part of the WTO arrangement, there were certain tools that were given to India. One of the tools is anti-dumping duty. There's also other tools like quantitative restrictions and so on. But let's just stick to anti-dumping duty. Between 1991 and August 2020, only 0.67% of the recommendations from DGTR to the Ministry of Finance were rejected. Right? So DGTR does a deep investigation into what are the areas where dumping is happening in India and then puts in that recommendation based on which the Ministry of Finance, Department of Revenue actually puts in the anti-dumping duties. Now, it is not a revenue collection initiative, it's a trade remedy. It is to ensure that Indian industry gets a level playing field and they do not face predatory pricing from foreign exporters. And in this particular case, we're talking about specifically imports from China. After September 2020, till the data that we had collected, till April 2023, 61% of the recommendations from DGTR has been rejected. From 0.67% to 61% of the recommendations being rejected. And obviously, China is freely dumping. Do keep in mind that the world has stopped buying Chinese products. Now, if you have large capacities, what do? You need to keep the factory running. You need to have people employed. Otherwise, there will be a severe problem in China. And so what the Chinese industries are doing is finding India to be a soft market and merrily dumping into India. I know of thousands of small manufacturing units, thousands of workers in small manufacturing stainless steel units which have gone belly up. Okay. They've just, many of them in Gujarat. And it's happening in industry after industry, be it ferromolybdenum, be it, whole bunch of chemicals. And along with it, having the free trade agreements with other countries has made the Chinese manufacturers route their product through these third countries. And which is why you see that post the COVID situation, there's a large amount of dumping happening from China. We are not responding to it, despite a clear direction from the top of the government that we must have Atmanirbhar Bharat and we must take the necessary steps to ensure that we have level playing field with the domestic manufacturers. And we're not protectionism, we are saying a level playing field, and that's not happening.
Jaijit Bhattacharya, coming back to you, sir, I just like to understand there's an interesting point that Pathikrit raises there, right? When he says that, okay, as far as self-reliance in the defense sector is concerned, India is absolutely on track, on the path, not just creating for ourselves, but now also sending out our planes and other defense material to other countries who are actually coming to us and saying, yes, we want to buy from you. So, of course, that aspect of very large industry is absolutely on track. But he is correct when he says that as far as MSMEs are concerned or smaller industries are concerned or our everyday needs are concerned, we still do end up turning to Chinese products. There's a pertinent point he raises that it's still cheaper to import from China than to actually get anything done on the ground here. Let's take a simple example. It's Diwali time right now. As far as lights in everybody's house are concerned, 90% of the lights will be Chinese for sure. We've still not managed to say crack something like this, which is a big opportunity. Lighting through the course of the year is a big opportunity. How do we then address this particular sector?
So, the fact of the matter is that we are actually consuming more Chinese goods now than what we were doing earlier. The import from China has actually gone up. And, the fact that we are able to export defense equipment, in fact, the last 5 years, there has been an absolute transformation in the defense industry where there are very strong Indian defense players who have turned up. I think we exported about $1 billion of defense equipment for the last financial year. So clearly it shows that India has the capabilities. Since we work on the ground in terms of what is the cost of manufacturing and so on, it's a myth that we are not as competitive as China is. Our manufacturers, if they're given the correct tax structure, are more competitive than China, if not as competitive. Now, what is happening is a whole slew of inverted duty structures. That is, the raw materials and the components are of a higher tax and the finished goods are of a lower tax. So how can domestic manufacturers compete? Because what they import in as raw materials is costed higher than what a Korea or a Chinese manufacturer gets. And therefore, when they export into India, that finished good has a much lower tax. So it is not that their value addition is more competitive. Their value addition is at the same level as Indian value addition. It's a distortion in tax structure, which is a big issue. The second part of it is also, as Prakrit had mentioned, the Japanese and the Koreans do not procure from anybody else, no matter what the pricing is. For Indians, if we get something at 10 paisa lower, we'll immediately switch. But for the Koreans and Japanese, they will not switch even if you price it at double the price. Third issue is that we can't even differentiate what is Indian, what is not.
Exactly.
I believe AMB Motors is a British company. It's an out-and-out Chinese company. Many of the equipment, such as from Motorola or even Philips home goods, are all Chinese. They have bought out the brands, and it's a completely Chinese import that is coming in. What we also see is that Indian players are now tying up, for example, with MG Motors to make it look Indian. But we know what the reality is, and therefore it becomes a very murky business. At the end of the day, the statistics speak for themselves. We are importing more from China in spite of all the efforts from the highest levels in the government.